The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, sending golden liquid and crystal shards across my dining room. The dining room I'd scrubbed on my hands and knees for 30 years, in the house I'd paid off with double shifts and skipped meals. But it wasn't the broken glass that made my heart stop. It was my son's voice, cutting through the Silicon Valley dinner party chatter like a serrated knife. "For God's sake, Mom, you're useless. Absolutely useless." Kevin's words hung in the air, heavy as lead. Every face at the table turned toward me. Venture capitalists in their $3,000 suits, their wives dripping in diamonds, and in the corner, my daughter-in-law, Sarah, with her phone raised, live streaming the entire humiliation to her 50,000 Instagram followers. I sat frozen, my hands still reaching for the water pitcher I'd been about to refill. At 68 years old, after raising this man, after sacrificing everything for him, I had become nothing more than an embarrassment to his curated life. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. Existing? Breathing? Being the wrong kind of mother for his new world? "Sorry doesn't fix the incompetence," Kevin continued, his face flushed with wine and wounded pride. "Jerry here was just telling us about his mother. She just sold her tech consulting firm for 8 figures. And what do I get to say? My mother lives in my laundry room and can't even serve dinner without destroying something."
The laundry room. He said it so casually, as if it were normal for a mother to sleep next to the washing machine in the house she'd helped him buy. 6 months ago, it had been, "Just temporary, Mom, while we renovate the guest suite." The renovation never happened. Instead, they'd converted that room into Sarah's content creation studio. "Kevin," one of the wives said softly, clearly uncomfortable, "perhaps we should—" No, it's fine." Kevin waved his hand dismissively. "She needs to hear this. Mom, you contribute nothing. Nothing. You eat our food, use our electricity, take up space, and what do we get in return? You can't even help with the baby properly. Sarah has to redo everything you touch." I glanced at Sarah, hoping for a shred of compassion from the woman I'd welcomed into our family 5 years ago. She kept filming, her lips curved in a small smile. The red recording light on her phone blinked like a cruel eye. "The algorithm loves family drama," she told me once. "It's so authentic." Authentic? Is that what this was? I thought back to 18 months ago when Tom died. My husband of 42 years, gone to a heart attack in his workshop, surrounded by the model planes he'd built since retiring from Boeing. Kevin had been so loving then, insisting I move in. "We're family, Mom. Family takes care of each other."
But grief has a way of revealing truth, doesn't it? And the truth was that Kevin's love had shifted when he realized there was no inheritance coming. He'd assumed Tom's Boeing pension meant hidden wealth. He didn't know about the medical bills, the remortgaged house to pay for experimental treatments. He didn't know because he'd never asked, just assumed and planned his expectations around money that didn't exist. Or so he thought. "You know what?" Kevin stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Maybe it's time we discussed alternative arrangements. There's a lovely assisted living facility in Fresno." "Fresno?" I found my voice, though it came out smaller than intended. "That's 3 hours away." "Exactly," Sarah chimed in, finally lowering her phone. "Far enough that we wouldn't have to—" She caught herself, smiled sweetly. "I mean, close enough for visits, but far enough for you to have your independence." Independence. In a shared room that would cost $4,000 a month, eating cafeteria food, waiting to die. That's what they meant by independence. "Jerry's mother," he continued, gesturing to his investor friend, "she's 73 and just completed a marathon. My friend David's mom still practices law. And here's mine, shuffling around in her slippers, unable to contribute anything meaningful to a simple dinner party." I looked down at my slippers, the ones Tom had given me for our last Christmas together. They were worn, yes, but they were mine, like the secrets I carried, like the truth Kevin couldn't see past his anger and ambition.
I should clean up the glass, I said quietly, starting to rise. Leave it, Kevin snapped. Maria will get it in the morning. Just go to your room, Mom, please. My room. The laundry room. I nodded, feeling every eye on me as I stood. My knees protested. Arthritis from years of kneeling beside hospital beds, checking on patients, saving lives. But Kevin didn't know about my nursing career. He'd rewritten history, telling people I'd been just a homemaker, erasing my 30 years of night shifts at Stanford Medical Center. As I walked past the table, I heard Jerry's wife whisper, "That was cruel, Kevin." It's realistic. Sometimes you have to be harsh to make necessary changes. I paused at the doorway, my hand on the frame Tom had reinforced with his own hands when we bought this house in 1987, back when Palo Alto was still affordable, before tech money transformed everything, including my son. "Kevin," I said, not turning around. "What, Mom?" "Your father would be so disappointed." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Sarah's phone seemed to hold its breath. I didn't wait for a response. I walked through the kitchen, my kitchen, where I taught Kevin to make cookies, where he'd done homework while I cooked dinner after 10-hour shifts, and into the small room that smelled of detergent and fabric softener.
Sitting on the narrow bed they'd wedged between the dryer and the wall, I pulled out my phone. The simple one Kevin insisted I use because smartphones were too complicated for me. If only he knew. I scrolled to a contact saved simply as M. Thompson, estate planning. 3 rings. "Margaret, it's rather late. Is everything all right?" "Michael," I said, my voice steady now. "It's time." "Are you certain?" "Once we proceed." "I'm certain. Email me the documents. I'll sign them tonight." "Margaret, I have to ask again. $2 million is my money to allocate as I see fit. And I've made my decision." As I hung up, I heard laughter from the dining room. Kevin's voice carried through the thin walls. "Can you believe she said that about Dad? As if he'd care about her feelings over financial reality." I looked at the small suitcase I'd kept packed under the bed for weeks, waiting for this moment. Not because I'd planned it, but because somehow, deep in my bones, I'd known it was coming. Tomorrow, Kevin would wake up to an empty laundry room and a truth that would shatter his carefully constructed world. But tonight I would listen to him laugh with his important friends, mocking the woman who'd given him life, who'd sacrificed her dreams for his, who'd loved him even when he'd become unrecognizable. The washing machine rumbled to life, Sarah doing laundry at 10 p.m., because she needed the perfect outfit for tomorrow's content. I smiled grimly. How fitting that my last night here would be punctuated by the sounds of a life I'd never really been welcome in.
I opened my banking app, the one on my Too Simple phone, and looked at the balance. $2.1 million, sitting quietly while my son planned to ship me off to Fresno. Useless, I whispered to myself, almost laughing at the irony. We'll see about that, Kevin. We'll see. The Uber driver didn't ask questions when I climbed into his Honda Civic at 2:47 a.m., clutching my suitcase and a manila envelope that held 42 years of secrets. Maybe he saw something in my face, the kind of grief that goes beyond tears, the kind that settles into your bones like winter frost. "Where to, ma'am?" 1847 Marina Boulevard, San Francisco, I said, watching my house, no, Kevin's house now, disappear in the side mirror. 35 years of memories vanishing into the darkness, reduced to a small square of light where my son was probably still entertaining, still laughing at his useless mother. The driver's eyes widened slightly. Marina Boulevard wasn't where forgotten mothers went to disappear. It was where money lived, where views of the Golden Gate Bridge cost more than most people's entire lives. He didn't know I owned a piece of it. Nobody knew. As we drove through the empty streets, I let myself remember what I'd spent so long pretending to forget. Tom's voice, excited and young, calling me at the hospital in 1997. Maggie, that computer company I've been researching, Apple, they're about to release something big. I know we promised to save for Kevin's college, but trust me on this. I'd been exhausted, coming off a 16-hour shift in the ICU. 3 patients had died that night, and I was covered in their families' tears. How much? I asked. $5,000. I know it's a lot, but do it, I'd said, surprising us both. Because sometimes when death surrounds you, you need to believe in tomorrow. That $5,000 was worth $1.2 million now. Kevin had no idea. He'd been too busy in high school, too important to listen to his father's investment strategies, too cool to care about his mother's boring hospital stories. The city lights blurred past, and I found myself touching the St. Christopher pendant at my throat, the one that Tom had given me when I graduated from nursing school. For protection, he'd said, when you're saving lives at 3 a.m. I'd saved so many lives, hundreds, maybe thousands, held hands as people took their last breaths, whispered comfort to the terrified, fought death with needles and knowledge and sheer stubborn will. But I couldn't save my own son from becoming someone I didn't recognize. My phone buzzed. Sarah had posted the video. When your mother-in-law ruins your investor dinner. Hashtag family drama. Hashtag boundaries. Hashtag toxic family. Already 500 views. The comments were pouring in. Your husband is so right. Set boundaries. OMG, the entitlement of that generation. You should totally do a series on dealing with difficult in-laws. I watched myself on the screen, shrinking, apologizing, disappearing. Is that really what I'd become? This small, shuffling woman in worn slippers? No, that was just what they saw. Because they didn't see Margaret Wilson, RN, BSN, who'd once performed CPR for 11 straight minutes until the ambulance arrived, saving a child's life. They didn't see the woman who'd worked double shifts every Christmas so younger nurses could be with their families. They didn't see the investor who'd quietly turned Tom's Boeing pension into a real estate portfolio, 3 rental properties in San Francisco, bought when everyone said the market would crash. The market always crashes, Tom had laughed, but in San Francisco, it crashes upward. He was right. Those 3 modest properties were worth $900,000 now. The tenants, all carefully chosen young families, sent me Christmas cards every year. Thank you for keeping our rent fair, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you for fixing the heater so quickly. Thank you for being the kind of landlord who cares. Kevin thought I spent my days watching soap operas. He didn't know I managed properties, reviewed contracts, made decisions that affected real families. He'd created a version of me that fit his narrative, the helpless widow, the burden, the problem to be solved. The Uber pulled up to a restored Victorian building, its bay windows reflecting the streetlights like knowing eyes. The driver looked back at me confused. "This is a residential building, ma'am. Are you sure?" "Quite sure." I handed him a $50 tip, cash, because I'd learned to always keep cash. "Thank you for the quiet ride." His eyes widened at the bill. "Ma'am, I can't." "You can and you will. Buy your daughter something nice." I'd noticed the car seat in the back, the toy elephant tucked into the cup holder. Inside the building, I took the original elevator, the one Tom and I had fallen in love with when we'd toured the place 15 years ago. "We can't afford this," I'd whispered. "Not with Kevin in college." "We can't afford not to," Tom had replied. "Sometimes you have to bet on your own future." The apartment was exactly as I'd left it 6 months ago, before moving in with Kevin. My sanctuary. My secret. 2 bedrooms overlooking the bay, filled with furniture that told our real story. Not the shabby grandmother narrative Kevin preferred, but the truth. Quality pieces, chosen with care, art from our travels. Yes, we'd traveled, another thing Kevin had forgotten. Japan, Italy, New Zealand. Always off-season, always carefully budgeted, but we'd seen the world. I set down my suitcase and walked to the window. The city sparkled below, indifferent and beautiful. Somewhere across the bay, Kevin was probably moving to the dessert course, telling his guests about his difficult decision regarding his aging mother. She just doesn't understand the modern world, he'd say. Still thinks it's 1985. Oh, Kevin, I understand the modern world perfectly. I understand it well enough to have hidden $2.1 million from a son who sees dollar signs instead of devotion. I pulled out the documents Michael had emailed. The Margaret Wilson Nursing Scholarship Fund. 3 full scholarships every year for nursing students from low-income families, named for Diane, Patricia, and Elena, the 3 night shift nurses who'd become my family when my own family was too busy to notice. They'd visit me on their breaks, these young women who reminded me why I'd become a nurse. We'd share terrible cafeteria coffee and stories about difficult patients, impossible doctors, the small victories that kept us going. When Tom was dying, they'd covered my shifts without being asked, showed up at the funeral in their scrubs because they'd come straight from work. "You're like our work mom," Elena had said once, hugging me after a particularly brutal shift. Always making sure we eat, always having our backs. A work mom. A real mom. The kind who showed up. My phone rang. Kevin. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. "Mom, where are you? Maria found your bed empty. This is really inconsiderate. I have an important pitch meeting tomorrow and now I have to deal with this drama. Call me back immediately."
Drama. That's what my leaving was to him, an inconvenience before his pitch meeting. I opened my laptop. Yes, I had a laptop, a good one, because property management in 2024 required technology. The scholarship fund documents were ready, waiting for my signature. $2.1 million, generating enough interest to put 3 students through nursing school every year. Forever. But first, I opened another document. The letter I'd been writing in my head for 6 months. Dear Kevin, you are right. I am useless, at least in the ways you measure usefulness. I can't network with venture capitalists or speak their language of disruption and scale. I can't live stream my life or build a personal brand. I can't pretend that money matters more than memory, that success is measured in stock options rather than kindness. But I was useful once. I was useful when I held you through colic, walking the halls at 3 a.m. after a 12-hour shift. I was useful when I worked overtime to pay for your saxophone lessons, your basketball camps, your college applications. I was useful when I taught you to tie your shoes, to ride a bike, to be kind to others, though that last lesson seems to have been forgotten. You assumed your father left nothing because you never asked about our life, only about our death benefits. You never wondered how a nurse and engineer afforded this house, your education, your start in life. You never asked because you'd already written our story. Working-class parents who got lucky with California real estate. The truth is more complex, like all truths are. Your father was brilliant with investments. I was brilliant at living below our means. Together, we built something. Not an empire, but enough. More than enough. Enough to ensure you'd never struggle, enough to retire with dignity, enough to leave a legacy. That legacy was supposed to be yours. Instead, it will go to students who understand what I tried to teach you, that healing matters, that showing up matters, that love isn't measured in utility but in presence. The Margaret Wilson Nursing Scholarship will fund 3 students every year. They'll learn to save lives, to hold hands in the darkness, to be useful in ways that can't be live-streamed or monetized. They'll call me Grandma Wilson, and I'll attend their graduations, their weddings, their children's birthdays. I'll have the family I always wanted, one that values more than my net worth.
You once asked me why I became a nurse instead of something better. I told you it was because I wanted to help people. You laughed and said helping people doesn't pay the bills. You were wrong. Helping people paid all my bills and yours too. It bought this house, funded your education, and built the fortune you never knew existed.
$2.1 million, Kevin. That's what your mother, the useless burden and worn slippers, was worth, because now it belongs to the future, just not your future. I love you. I will always love you, but I will not enable this version of you any longer. Your useless mother, Margaret. P.S. The laundry room still smells like the lavender detergent you're allergic to. You might want to air it out before converting it to whatever comes next. I stared at the letter, then closed the laptop without sending it. Not yet. Let him wonder for a while. Let him explain to his important friends why his mother vanished in the night like some Victorian ghost. Outside, fog was rolling in from the bay, swallowing the city in soft gray. I made myself tea, proper tea, in my grandmother's china, not the mugs Kevin insisted were more practical, and sat by the window. My phone buzzed again. 17 missed calls now. 7 from Kevin, 10 from Sarah. The video was up to 50,000 views. I was trending, apparently. The useless mother who ruined dinner. If only they knew what else I was about to ruin. But tonight, in my secret apartment, with my secret fortune and my secret plans, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Tomorrow would bring chaos. Kevin would rage. Sarah would live stream the drama. The investors would whisper. The lawyers would call. But tonight, Margaret Wilson, RN, mother, widow, millionaire, burden, was exactly where she belonged. Home.
3 days. That's how long it took for Kevin to find me. 3 days of ignored calls, turning to desperate texts, turning to emails with subject lines that evolved like the stages of grief. Where are you? To, Mom, I'm worried. To, this is unacceptable. To, we need to talk about your mental state. My mental state. As if clarity was a condition that needed treatment. I was pouring my morning coffee, real coffee, from the French press Tom bought me for our 30th anniversary, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my son. He looked exhausted, unshaven, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Behind him stood Sarah, her phone already out, documenting their rescue mission. "I know you're in there, Mom," Kevin called through the door. "The doorman confirmed it. Please, we need to talk." The doorman. Of course, Kevin had probably charmed him, played the worried son card, or maybe he'd thrown money at the problem, like he did with everything else. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "Hello, Kevin." "Sarah." They stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Maybe it was the silk blouse instead of my usual worn cardigan. Maybe it was the pearl earrings, real ones, not the costume jewelry they assumed I wore. Or maybe it was the way I stood straight, no longer shrinking into myself. "Mom, what is this place?" Kevin's eyes darted around, taking in the marble entryway, the glimpse of bay windows beyond. "Whose apartment is this?" "Mine." The word hung between us like a foreign language. "That's impossible," Sarah said, lowering her phone for once. "The rent here must be—" "I don't pay rent." I stepped aside, a queen granting audience. "Would you like to come in, or would you prefer to have this conversation in the hallway?" They entered like sleepwalkers, Kevin's mouth falling open as he took in the living room. Original hardwood floors, crown molding, art on the walls, real art, not prints. The view of the bay that real estate agents would kill for. "This can't be yours. You don't have money. Dad's pension, the mortgage, you said—" "I said what you wanted to hear. You never asked the right questions, so I never offered the right answers." Sarah was filming again, but her hands shook slightly. "Mrs. Wilson, I don't understand. If you had all this, why were you living in our laundry room?" Our laundry room. Not the laundry room, our. As if I hadn't paid the down payment on that house. Because I loved my son, I said simply. And I wanted to believe he loved me too, not just what I could provide. Kevin sank onto my sofa, the one Tom and I had chosen together on our 40th anniversary, joking that we'd finally reached the age where we could buy furniture we'd never need to replace. "How much?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "How much have you been hiding?" Hiding, as if my privacy was a betrayal. "Michael, would you come in, please?" I called. My lawyer entered from the kitchen, where he'd been waiting. Michael Thompson, a state attorney, tall and distinguished in his navy suit. He'd handled Tom's will, helped structure our investments, kept our secrets for 2 decades. "Mrs. Wilson, are you sure you want to do this now?" he asked gently. "I'm sure." He handed Kevin a folder, cream-colored paper, heavy stock, official. "What is this?" Kevin asked, though his shaking hands suggested he already knew. "A full accounting of my assets. Since you're so concerned about my mental state, I thought you should see exactly how mentally compromised I am." Kevin opened the folder. I watched his face change as he read. Confusion, disbelief, then the slow dawn of understanding. $2.1 million, he whispered. In assets. 2.3, actually. The market's been kind this week. Sarah grabbed the papers, her influencer facade cracking. The rental properties? The stocks? This can't be real. Apple at $5,000 in 1997, I said conversationally. Your father-in-law was a visionary. 3 rental properties bought when everyone said the market would crash. A life insurance policy you never knew existed because you never asked. 30 years of night shifts, invested wisely. Compound interest is a beautiful thing. Kevin looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the little boy who used to climb into my lap after nightmares. Except now, he was living one. "Why?" he asked. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything?" I leaned forward. "Would you have treated me differently, valued me more, or would you have just seen a bigger ATM? That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. "Was it fair when you told your investors I was incompetent? Was it fair when you made me sleep next to the washing machine? Was it fair when you called me useless in front of a room full of people while your wife broadcast my humiliation to the world?"
Sarah had the grace to stop filming. I didn't mean, yes, you did. I stood, walking to the window. The city sprawled below, indifferent and eternal. You meant every word. I've watched you this past year, Kevin. Watched you calculate my worth and find me wanting. Watched you rewrite our history to make yourself the hero and me the burden. Watched you become someone I don't recognize. Mom, please. I'm not finished. I turned back to face them. Do you know what I did last night? I finalized the Margaret Wilson Nursing Scholarship. 3 full rides every year for students who want to save lives. Students who understand that worth isn't measured in stock options or Instagram followers. Kevin's face went pale. You're giving it away? All of it? Every penny. But I'm your son. He stood, paper scattering. That money should what? Be yours? I smiled sadly. Why? Because you exist? Because you're entitled to the fruits of my labor? My sacrifices? My choices? Because we're family. The word exploded between us like shrapnel. Family. I tasted the word, found it bitter. Family doesn't livestream each other's humiliation. Family doesn't warehouse their mothers in laundry rooms. Family doesn't call each other useless. I was stressed. The startup, the investors. There's always a reason, isn't there? I walked to my bookshelf, pulled out a photo album he'd never seen. Look at these.
pages of pictures. Tom and me, young and hopeful. Kevin as a baby, a toddler, a gap-toothed first grader, but also other photos. Me in scrubs, exhausted but smiling. Tom at his drafting table, designing dreams. Us at the closing for our first rental property, terrified and thrilled. This was our life, I said, rich in ways you never bothered to understand. Every double shift, every skipped vacation, every sacrifice for you. So you could have chances we never did. So you could become this. Kevin was crying now. Ugly tears that reminded me of when he'd skinned his knee at 5. But I was out of Band-Aids for wounds he'd inflicted on himself. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll change. I'll be different now that you know I have money? I asked quietly. That's exactly why you can't have it. Sarah found her voice. You can't just cut him off. He's your son. We have a baby. Liam, I said, and saw her flinch. My grandson, who I've been deemed too useless to care for properly. Tell me, Sarah, when was the last time you let me hold him without hovering, without redoing everything I did?
Her silence was answer enough. I've left provisions for Liam, I continued. A trust for his education, accessible only for tuition and books. He'll have chances like his father did. What he makes of them is up to him. You're destroying our family, Kevin said, his voice breaking. No, I corrected. I am refusing to fund its dysfunction any longer. Michael stepped forward. Mr. Wilson, your mother has been more than generous. The house you live in, she paid the down payment. Your college education, debt-free because of her. Your first car, your wedding, the seed money for your startup, all her. Most parents give far less. But she has millions. Which she earned, Michael said firmly, through decades of work you've dismissed as meaningless, through investments you never bothered to understand, through sacrifices you've forgotten. I walked to my desk, pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Kevin grabbed it eagerly, probably hoping for a check. Instead, he found photos, not the curated ones from the album, but others. Me asleep at the kitchen table over textbooks getting my RN degree. Tom working overtime, exhausted. The two of us at Liam's birth, in the waiting room because we hadn't been invited into delivery. This is what useless looks like, I said. 42 years of being useful to everyone but myself. And you know what? I'm done. So that's it? Kevin's tears had dried, replaced by the anger I'd been expecting. You're just going to abandon us? Live in your secret luxury apartment while we struggle? Abandon? I laughed, but it came out cracked. Like you abandoned me to the laundry room? Like you abandoned my memory every time you told people I was just a homemaker? Like you abandoned basic human decency for Instagram likes? We'll contest this, Sarah said suddenly. Mental incompetence. No sound person gives away millions out of spite. Try it, Michael said coolly. Mrs. Wilson has been examined by 3 independent psychiatrists in preparation for this. She's of sounder mind than most people half her age. You planned this, Kevin said, wonderment mixing with horror. You've been planning this. Since the night you called me useless. Since I realized my son had become someone who measures love in dollars and values people by their net worth. Since I understood that staying was enabling your cruelty. What am I supposed to tell people? He asked. And God help me, that was his concern. Not losing his mother, but losing face. Tell them the truth, I suggested. Tell them your useless mother turned out to be worth millions. Tell them she chose to give it to strangers who might actually make the world better. Tell them what? He interrupted. That my own mother hates me? I moved then, crossing to him in 3 quick steps, taking his face in my hands like I had when he was small, forcing him to meet my eyes.
I don't hate you, I said, and felt my voice break on the truth of it. I love you. I will always love you. You're my baby, my boy, my greatest joy, and my deepest heartbreak. But I don't like who you've become, and I won't finance it anymore. Mom! I love you enough to let you fail, to let you struggle, to let you learn what it means to be truly useless, not to investors or influencers, but to yourself. When you figure that out, when you remember who you used to be before the world convinced you that worth equals wealth, call me. I let go, stepped back. Until then, this is goodbye. You're really doing this, Sarah said, her phone hanging forgotten at her side. You're really walking away from your own family? No, I'm walking towards something better. A life where I'm valued for more than what I can provide. Where love isn't transactional. Where being useful means more than being used. I nodded to Michael, who handed them a final envelope. What's this? Kevin asked numbly. 6 months rent on your house, I said, paid in full. After that, you're on your own. Consider it my final act of useless generosity. They left in a daze, Kevin clutching the envelope like a lifeline. From my window, I watched them emerge onto the street below. Sarah was gesticulating wildly, probably already spinning this for her followers. Kevin just looked lost. For a moment, my resolve wavered. He was still my baby, still the boy who'd written me Mother's Day cards in crayon, who'd brought me dandelions and called them flowers. Then I remembered. You're useless, Mom! And I straightened my spine. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena, one of my night shift nurses. Grandma Wilson! Just got the call about the scholarship. I'm crying in the supply closet. You're changing lives. Attached was a photo. 3 young nursing students, faces bright with hope and determination. My new family. My chosen legacy. I looked back down at the street, but Kevin and Sarah were gone. Swallowed by the city, by their choices, by a life that measured worth all wrong. Useless, I whispered to the empty room, and finally smiled. Because being useless to the wrong people might just be being invaluable to the right ones. And at 68 years old, I was just getting started.
1 year later, I stood in the hospital auditorium watching 3 young women cross the stage. Alina, Maria, and Jennifer, my first scholarship recipients, clutched their nursing certificates with the same reverence I'd once held mine. Their families filled entire rows, cheering and crying, holding up homemade signs, "First nurse in our family." "Grandma Wilson!" Elena ran to me after the ceremony, her cap askew, tears streaming. "My mother wants to meet you. She says you're an angel." Angel. If only she knew I was just a useless old woman who'd found her purpose in the most unexpected way. Elena's mother grabbed my hands, speaking rapid Spanish through her tears. Elena translated, "She says because of you, our family has hope. She says you gave us more than money. You gave us a future." That's when I saw him. Kevin stood by the exit door, thinner than before, his expensive suit replaced by a simple button-down and jeans. No Sarah beside him, no phone recording, just my son, watching me be the mother he'd never let me be to him. Our eyes met across the crowded room. He raised his hand slightly, not a wave, just an acknowledgement. Then he turned and left. The next morning, I found an envelope under my apartment door. No address, no stamp, just Mom, written in Kevin's handwriting. Inside, a single piece of paper. I've been working at a nonprofit, teaching coding to inner-city kids. The pay is nothing, the hours are long, the kids call me Mr. K and think I'm ancient at 43. Yesterday, one of them, Deshaun, 14, brilliant but angry at the world, finally got his program to run. He looked at me like I'd handed him the moon. "Mr. K," he said, "you're the first person who didn't give up on me." I thought of you. All those night shifts, all those sacrifices, all that love I took for granted. I understand now.
Being useful isn't about what you produce, it's about who you lift up. Sarah left, took Liam, says I'm not the man she married. She's right. That man measured worth in dollars. This one measures it in Deshawn's smile. I'm not asking for forgiveness, not asking for money. Just wanted you to know, I finally understand what you tried to teach me. Your useless son, Kevin. P.S. Deshawn wants to be a doctor. I told him about the Wilson scholarships. I hope that's okay. I sat on my leather chair, holding the letter, and cried for the first time in 6 months. Not tears of sadness, but of something more complex. Grief for who we'd been, hope for who we might become. 3 weeks later, Kevin appeared at my door carrying coffee and pastries from the Filipino bakery I loved, the one Tom and I used to visit every Sunday, the one I'd never told Kevin about because he would have deemed it not Instagram-worthy. He told me you come every Sunday, he said quietly. Order the same thing, ube pastry and black coffee. How long have you been going there? 2 months. The owner, Mrs. Reyes, talks about you. Says you helped her daughter get into nursing school 20 years ago. Says her daughter now runs a clinic in the Philippines because of you.
We sat at my kitchen table, not the formal dining room, but the small kitchen table where real conversations happen. The coffee grew cold as Kevin told me about his new life, the nonprofit barely covering rent, the roommate situation, the humility of starting over at 43. I dream about that night sometimes, he admitted, calling you useless. I wake up with the word in my mouth like poison. We all say things. No, he met my eyes. Don't minimize it. I became a monster, Mom. A LinkedIn-perfect, Instagram-filtered monster who valued metrics over meaning. I need to own that. And now? Now I'm trying to be useful. Really useful. Not networking useful or venture capital useful, just human useful. We talked until the sun set over the bay, painting my apartment in shades of gold and forgiveness. Not reconciliation, not yet, but a beginning. Can I tell you something about being useless? He paused at the door, waiting. The night you said that, I wanted to die. Not literally, but something in me. The mother part, the part that lived for you, it died. I held up my hand as he started to speak. Let me finish. It needed to die, because in its place, something else was born. Margaret. Not Mom, not widow, not burden, just Margaret. And she's pretty amazing. I know, he said softly. I met her today. After he left, I walked to my window, watching the city lights begin their nightly show. My phone buzzed, photos from Maria, my second scholarship recipient. She just delivered her first baby as a student nurse. I did it, Grandma W., Mom and baby healthy. I remembered everything you taught about staying calm. I smiled, thinking about legacies. Tom used to say wealth wasn't what you accumulated, but what you generated in others. For 40 years, I'd thought he meant money. Now I understood he meant something richer. The compound interest of kindness, the dividends of dignity, the bull market of believing in people. Kevin had been right about one thing. I had been useless. Useless at playing the game where worth is measured in net worth. Useless at shrinking myself to fit others' comfort. Useless at accepting that love should come with terms and conditions.
Sometimes being called useless is the greatest gift. It frees you to be useful in ways that actually matter. My doorbell rang. Mrs. Chen from next door, holding soup. You missed our Tai Chi class this morning. We were worried. I had a visitor, I said, accepting the warmth, both the soup and the caring. Ah, she smiled knowingly, the son who finally learned to see. Because that's the thing about being invisible. When you finally let yourself be seen, you discover you were never really alone. You were just looking for family in the wrong places. At 68, I'd learned the most valuable lesson of all. Your worth isn't determined by those who call you useless, but by those whose lives you touch when you decide to be useful on your own terms. And somewhere across the city, my son was teaching a brilliant boy named Deshawn to code his dreams into reality. Not for stock options or IPO dreams, but because lifting others is the only wealth that compounds infinitely. I picked up my phone and typed a simple message. Tell Deshaun I'd like to meet him. Love, your useful mom. The response came immediately. We'll bring coffee from the Filipino bakery. Love, you're learning to be useful, son. Outside, the fog rolled in, soft and forgiving, blanketing the city in second chances. Tomorrow, 3 more nursing students would begin their journeys. Tomorrow, Kevin would teach another child to believe in possibility. Tomorrow, we'd all be a little more useful to someone who needed it. But tonight, Margaret Wilson, mother, widow, millionaire, human, was exactly who she was meant to be. Beautifully, powerfully, perfectly useless to everyone who didn't deserve her, and invaluable to everyone who did. And that, as it turned out, was worth more than $2.1 million. It was worth everything.